The bright side of addiction is recovery. Knowing that friends and family don't have to worry about you, that's one of the greatest gifts of recovery. Hi, everyone. I'm Neil Scott, and if you are new to our podcast, we welcome you. If you've been here before, welcome back. And if you are in recovery or know or love someone who is, or you simply want to know more about the recovery process, or maybe you're a bit concerned about someone you know or love who is harmfully using alcohol or any other drug, this is the podcast for you. We carry the message of hope and the promise of recovery. And a reminder, you can find all of our podcasts at recoverycoasttocoast.org. Recent episodes have featured interviews with Tom Farley. He's the brother of the late comedy legend Chris Farley, former Colorado Rockies manager Clint Hurdle, Dion DiMucci from Dion of the Belmonts, a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Congresswoman Madeline Dean, and many other prominent people in long-term recovery, plus conversations with everyday people in long-term recovery, sharing their story, their insight, their path. Now, in this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, a conversation with John F. He's a grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And at John's request, we will only use his first name in respect for the 11th and 12th traditions of AA. John has been sober for nearly 40 years, and he's got a rather interesting journey into recovery. It started in AlAnon. Here's a quick clip from today's program.
I hadn't got sober in AA, first of all, I wouldn't have been here. I'd have drank myself to death. And I'm convinced of that because of the way I got sober. I never thought about a drink those 7 years and 9 months in Al-Anon. It never crossed my mind. I needed Al-Anon. I needed the time there. But ultimately, I needed to be in Alcoholics Anonymous. Without my sobriety, Neil, I have nothing.
We will hear John's story of long-term recovery coming up next. And later in the podcast, one last word. And this time, the last word will come from actor Dick Van Dyke. Our website is recoverycoasttocoast.org, and if you'd like to help us out financially or know of a foundation that might be interested in underwriting part or all of our program, we would be very, very grateful. A reminder, our email address is recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net, and we would love to hear from you. Recovery Coast to Coast, supported by Sundown M Ranch, one of America's oldest, least expensive, and most successful treatment programs. They're listed in Newsweek magazine's recent list of America's top treatment providers. The patient is the reason we are here. That is and always has been the motto of Sundown M Ranch. They focus on the patient. You see, Sundown is a not-for-profit program. Their bottom line is not financial, but recovery-based and evidence-based. They have been successfully treating individuals and families for nearly 60 years. And they were the very first residential program for alcoholism in Washington State. Licensed, accredited, certified, and a founding member of NAATP, the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers, representing the gold standard in the treatment of addictive disease. Residential treatment at Sundown M Ranch is important because it allows an individual to focus on treatment and healing and to learn new skills in a supportive community environment. They also allow family members an opportunity to participate in their comprehensive family program. Their beautiful remote location is located on 30 acres, which they own, at the mouth of the gorgeous Yakima River Canyon in central Washington, overflowing with peace and serenity. Sundown accepts most health insurance plans, and if money is a problem, they can work with you. Their staff is kind, compassionate, and treats every patient with respect and dignity. And they don't just treat and release. They provide a sturdy bridge back into the community, the family, the workplace, providing the necessary tools to support long-term recovery. Now, if you go to their website, sundown.org, you can get a lot more information, as well as see photos of their facility. It's where recovery begins. Sundown.org. Well, it's time for some coffee and time for some conversation. John F. is a grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and for nearly 40 years, his story, as are most stories, is unique and inspiring. He came into recovery from, well, I'll call it a side door, AlAnon. Well, I'll let John tell the story. We are back on Recovery Coast to Coast. Gosh, it's great to have you with us again. We're going to have an interesting conversation with a guy who used to live in Spokane, and he moved down south to, I believe it's Greer, South Carolina. His name is John F. He's been active in the fellowship for, I believe, close to 40 years. Is that correct, John?
40 years, yes. 40 years in February.
So you're a newcomer.
I'm not an old-timer. That starts at 55.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, John, take us back to the very beginning for you, back to maybe 41 years ago and beyond. What was happening in John's life?
Well, actually, Neil, my 12-step life began almost 50 years ago when my wife, Gloria, got sober.
Oh.
Gloria got sober in April of 1976. We were living in Orange County, California. My business career was on the rise. I'd been promoted twice in 3 years and was doing well, but she was not. So I started Al-Anon a couple of weeks after she went into treatment.
No kidding.
So she got sober. It was remarkable. It was surely God intervening in our lives at a time we desperately needed it. She went to a treatment center called Beverly Manor, which was owned by a chain that owned mostly nursing homes, but they had one alcoholism treatment center.
What was that like for her, and what was that like for you as an Al-Anon member?
Well, it was because of them that I went to Al-Anon, because I'd go up there. My story is a little bizarre. I was within an eyelash of being constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself. Gloria was my drinking partner. We drank together. I would tell people I married her to see if I could ever outdrink her. And I think on one or two occasions I did. Other than that, it was her putting me to bed. So she was my drinking buddy. But her disease progressed rapidly. So she ends up in treatment. I end up in Al-Anon. A year after she got sober, I was in Chicago on business. I got involved in something I should not have been involved in, and I got caught. I didn't get caught by the right people, but I got caught. People knew about it. And I, for the first time, Neil, in my life, did not want to lose what I had. Prior to that, I've been willing to risk anything and everything to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, generally under the influence of alcohol. I came home first time ever feeling guilt, shame, and remorse. It's going to sound ridiculous to it, but this is true. I blamed alcohol for the first time ever and stopped drinking. Now, what I believe today is that was God at work in my life. So I stopped drinking. I'm active in Al-Anon. I'm on the 12-step call list. In fact, I am the first man to serve on what was at the time the inaugural Orange County Al-Anon Service Board.
Wow.
I wasn't elected, but I had 2 votes. I know my men's group voted for me. The other one, I have no idea who they were. And I served on that group because an elected member fell into ill health and had to resign. So I filled her slot for a year and a half. It was a powerful experience to me. Women I gave a lot of power to. I didn't know how to talk to them. I didn't know how to act around them. And it was in Al-Anon that I learned that women are not all that different from us guys. First of all, they have egos. Secondly, they have fear. They're angry. They're resentful. So apart from nature, they're exactly like we are when it comes to alcoholism. And so I learned how to have a friend, a woman friend. I have a daughter who got pregnant at 16. I thought it was the worst thing that could ever happen to us. Turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to us. And my men's group had nothing for me. It was the women in the mixed meetings I went to that came up to me and told me, it'll be okay. You'll love the child. My daughter did this. My sister did this. I did this. My niece did this. Mm. And it was a powerful experience for me. My budding business career was starting to come apart. And I was making some real dumb decisions. And I found myself in San Diego in 1984 trying to loan money when interest rates were 19, 20, 21, 22%. It was extremely difficult, I can assure you. And God was coming after me about whether or not I'm an alcoholic. And my argument was that I needed a job, I needed to make more money, I needed. And if I drank again and had a problem, then I could go to Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, one morning I had a dream that I had stood up in a meeting, which is what we did then in Orange County. The newcomers were asked to stand up and give their name and their disease. And it frightened me awake. And I had to go to the kitchen. The light on the clock in the bedroom was burned out. I went to the kitchen at 4:20 in the morning. And I went back to bed and I said, I need to go to sleep. And God came after me again. And this time when I threw out that argument about whether or not if I were to drink again, I could go to AA, God said to me, John, alcoholism is a terminal progressive disease. Now, this wasn't news to me. I'd been hearing that for years. But what happened was, he said, and if you drink again, you may not be able to get back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that frightened me. What ran through my body was terror. And I was out of my bed in the kitchen calling a friend in AA. And because it's AA, 20 minutes later, we're in a coffee shop and I'm pouring this out to him. So that was my start in Alcoholics Anonymous.
What was the first year like for you, John?
Well, it was full of adventure, I'll tell you. We had our house on the market. I was offered a job with a friend back in Spokane. The house hadn't sold. All of a sudden it sold. I took a 60-day chip. Gloria took a 9-year coin. And we're off to Spokane. So I started my new job, and which didn't work out, by the way. The job that I was to work 23 years at and retire was down the road. But for whatever reason, I needed to be in Spokane doing what I did before that job came available.
I often say there's no such thing as coincidence, John. It's God incidence.
Yes.
During the drinking years, how bad did it get for you?
Oh, I was horrible, Neil. I've often been surprised that I've lived this long without having esophageal cancer, because I threw up a lot. Dry heaves from the beginning. My first drunk came at 14, and I threw up, blacked out, got caught, and that was pretty much the story of my drinking. Violently ill, dry heaves. Remember one time I came to. I didn't wake up. I came to on my bedroom floor, and I was throwing up straight up. I was flat on my back, and a voice said to me, John, turn your head or you're going to die. And I must have turned my head, because when I came to again, I am lying in this mess. And Neil, this is what I thought. I said I had been drinking Gibson's, martinis with onions, and all I could smell was that rank onion smell. And I said, I am never, ever going to put an onion in anything I ever drink again. Never was the booze.
Wow. And during the height of your drinking, did anyone try to slow you down or say, geez, John, you need to do something about your drinking?
No, because I drank with the people that drank like I did. And my mother, though very concerned, just never said anything, which there wasn't much she could have said.
You've been sober now 40 years. What are some of the highlights of your 40 years in recovery?
Well, Neil, when I went to Spokane, we were not warmly welcomed. It seems like there were some people that had moved up there from Orange County and had told them they weren't doing it right. Well, they were doing it okay. They were just doing it differently. And so I called my sponsor in Southern California, and I said, Ray, this. And he said to me, John, what is going on with the hand at the end of your arm? And I had to pause and think. So I got a hold of central office. I got on the 12-step call list. I got a lot of calls, Neil. This was still in the days when people picked up the phone and called AA with regularity. And I got a lot of calls. I didn't know anybody in AA to take with me. So I went by myself. And I learned there were neighborhoods in Spokane that were a little shoddy. But I would go, and I would pick those men up. I would take them to a meeting. I would take them to detox. I would take them to emergency. I'd take them wherever they needed or wanted to go. To my knowledge, none of those men got sober. But like Bill in his early days as the lone member of this fellowship, I stayed sober.
During that 40 years, was there any time when you were tempted to pick up?
No, it's kind of strange that I wasn't, but I wasn't. But here's a couple of stories that will tell you that I have an alcoholic mind. I was watching TV one day, and I'm a long time sober. I'm 20 plus years sober. I'm watching a cooking show, but they're evaluating, if that's the term they use, bourbon. And I've often said if bourbon was the only alcohol available, I wouldn't be a drunk. Well, that's a lie. But I didn't like bourbon. I couldn't drink bourbon. And so they're talking about it, and this guy says, well, this has a nice caramely taste. And my mind went, I like caramel. I played with that for a few days, and finally I told somebody about it just to get it out of my head. Sometime after that, I'm on the golf course playing with two guys I don't know. One of them had birdied the prior hole, and he pulls out a bottle of Firebird. Hey, want a shot? I said, no, thank you. I go to my ball, I'm addressing my ball, and my mind says, I like cinnamon. So I have an alcoholic mind. I've just been freed from any thought of taking a drink. And I credit part of that, certainly it goes to God, but Gloria had not had a drink. And she was not going to have a drink. And I lived with her, and I admired her, and I loved her, and I was not going to jeopardize what we had over a drink.
John, alcoholism, as you know, is a family disease, and I believe your son is now sober.
My son, Jeffrey, has 36 years.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
My daughter, Joni, in December, will have 24 years. Gloria's sister, who she had a hand in her early sobriety, saved her life after a slip, died with 42 years sobriety. And her two boys both have late 20s or early 30 years of sobriety. So we went from an alcoholic family to an AA family.
That is truly amazing. Tell me about spirituality and the role of spirituality in your program.
Well, I had a spiritual experience way back in 1971. I was watching a Billy Graham program because I could not find anything else to watch. And I was in Montana, and Montana had cable TV. So there should have been a hockey night in Canada or something. There just wasn't anything to watch. So I watched it. Of course, I had an attitude towards Billy. I'd never heard him talk before. I'd never read anything he'd written. I listened. I don't remember a thing he said, but I remember getting down inside of my bed and saying the prayer as he suggested, and then I got up and turned the TV off, and I went to bed, and I slept like I hadn't slept in weeks. I'm going down the road the next morning, and a voice says to me, "John, I guess you're a Christian now." And then this voice says to me, "Well, you're going to have to stop doing that. You can't do that anymore. You can't do that anymore." And my alcoholic rebellion rose up, Neil, and I said, "I don't think I want to not do those things. And in fact, I'm not." But I remembered a prayer my mother had shared with me where you ask God for strength and guidance to get through whatever it is you're going through. And I prayed that prayer almost like a mantra at times as Gloria's disease progressed. So when I got to AlAnon and they started talking about God, I remembered that. And then I was given a book. Some of the things I did in the early years, I just get hilarious over because I read this book and it was positive. I think it was called Prison to Praise. It was by a Presbyterian minister. And I would tell people it was the first Christian book, positive Christian book I ever read. Well, it was the only Christian book I ever read. So that got me thinking about God. And then Gloria, surprisingly, who had a punishing God that she'd grown up with and very reluctant towards it. My daughter Kelly, who I live with now, had gone to church and had got born again. And she was talking on the phone to the ladies and her friends and using terms like praise the Lord. And Gloria wanted to know where this was coming from. And she went to church with Kelly the next week and came home saved. And so we had to walk that fine line of being active in a church and being active in AA. And for us, we were active in 4 years in the church we got saved in, and we were active 4 years in another church before we left. And when we came to Spokane, we were looking for a church, and we just struggled to find one where we felt comfortable. And we finally did, and Jeff and Tina, his wife, who was sober in AA as well, came with us. And then it was a distance for Jeff and Tina, and they stopped coming, and then Gloria stopped coming. And I sat down with her, and I said, "Gloria, are we going to go to church or are we not?" And this is what she said to me. She said, "John, I don't have a ministry at church. I have a ministry in Alcoholics Anonymous." And that was true. Gloria sponsored a number of women. She was really indescribable, Neil. She was soft. She was hard. She was tough. She was sweet. And when she talked to AA, you listened. And she didn't limit her sharing to women. I don't believe she sponsored any men, but she had influence over a number of men that we both knew, because she would get in their face and tell them what they needed to be doing and what they needed to be not doing. She was quite remarkable. That we adhered to Bill's writing and certainly the 12th step. After Gloria died, the guy invited me to go to one of the local lockups. And it was a minimum security facility. It was absolute insanity. They had men and women together, and they lived in separate buildings. But other than that, they were together. They had to double fence the activities yard to keep them apart. It was insanity. And they had an AA meeting out there. He invited me to come out there and speak. And later, people suggested they needed help out there. I don't remember the circumstances. And so I volunteered to go out there every month and chair a meeting. And I did that for 10 years. I didn't quit because I wanted to. They finally wised up and transferred the men out of there and into an all-men facility. And there were women that went out there that were taking meetings to the women, and then eventually they closed it down.
Mm.
So, and then after that, after Gloria died, there were a couple of guys. I had them. Another thing I did with concerning the hand at the end of my arm, I was sponsoring 2 or 3 guys, and I had some friends in AA, and we were talking about the need of a big book study in Spokane. There was one that met on Monday nights that read the whole book, which was too much in the stories for my taste.
Mm.
And so we got together and decided to start a Saturday morning meeting at 8:30. We didn't have a place to meet, so I offered my basement as a temporary location. At the end of 3 weeks, they took a group touch and said they didn't want to leave. So they were there every Saturday, whether we were home or not, for 37 years.
Wow.
So there were some guys in that meeting that were going out to Airway Heights, which is a state penitentiary out on the West Plains.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, maybe I need to get back doing that. And so I went out there for what ended up to be another 10 years. It ended when COVID struck. They shut it down.
Mm.
So 12-step work has been essential in my recovery, Neil, and it still is. I don't do the 12-step stuff anymore, but I still go to a treatment center once a month to chair a meeting there. And I have a couple of sponsees here.
Great.
And I still sponsor 3 people in Washington that call me every week. So that's been a huge part of my recovery is the 12-step work.
And before we wrap this up, I want to ask you one question, and that is, what does recovery mean to you today?
Oh, everything, Neil. Everything. If I hadn't got sober in AA, first of all, I wouldn't have been here. I'd have drank myself to death. And I'm convinced of that because of the way I got sober. I never thought about a drink for those 7 years and 9 months in AlAnon. It never crossed my mind. So I was protected by God. I needed AlAnon. I needed the time there. But ultimately, I needed to be in Alcoholics Anonymous. Without my sobriety, Neil, I have nothing. I have 5 kids. I'm loved and admired by all of them. I'm welcome in their home. I have 11. I lost a grandson to a medical situation, not drugs or alcohol. I lost a grandson, so I have 11 grandchildren. I have 19. I have 19 great-grandchildren.
Oh, my goodness.
And I have some type of a relationship with all of them. All of them.
That's beautiful.
I would not have had that. I just wouldn't have had it.
I always say the bright side of alcoholism is recovery, and John, you certainly embody that.
Thank you.
And I thank you for your time and your story.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you've enjoyed my conversation with John, who remains happy, joyous, and free, one day at a time. By the way, I want to remind listeners of this podcast, if you would like to tell your story of recovery, regardless of the path that you've chosen, as long as you have been in continuous recovery for a year or more, please drop us a note, recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. Coming up next, The Last Word. Iconic actor Dick Van Dyke is going to share some thoughts. We'll have that in about 30 seconds.
She has always been your baby. But when your daughter got into drugs and alcohol, she turned into a stranger. What do you do? Where do you turn? Contact Sundown M Ranch. Sundown's nationally recognized youth treatment program guides young people back to a life free of drugs and alcohol. All treatment is gender-specific and directed by caring certified professionals in a safe environment. You can get your daughter back and get to know her again. Go to www.sundown.org to learn more.
And now, as promised, actor Dick Van Dyke gets today's last word on Recovery Coast to Coast.
She has always been your baby. But when your daughter got into drugs and alcohol, she turned into a stranger. What do you do? Where do you turn? Contact Sundown M Ranch. Sundown's nationally recognized youth treatment program guides young people back to a life free of drugs and alcohol. All treatment is gender-specific and directed by caring certified professionals in a safe environment. You can get your daughter back and get to know her again. Go to www.sundown.org to learn more.
Well, that wraps up this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast. If you've enjoyed our podcast, please share it with others via social media or simply by telling a friend about it. You can find all of our podcasts at recoverycoasttocoast.org. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, our email is recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. Also, please hit the subscribe or follow button. It is free, and you'll be notified the next time we publish a podcast. If you're considering treatment for a friend or a loved one, or maybe yourself, be sure and visit naatp.org/AID, the Addiction Information Directory. It's the list of those treatment programs that adhere to the strict ethical guidelines. Of course, one of them is Sundown M Ranch, but there's a lot of them around the country. Join us next time for America's Voice for Recovery, Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast. And another shout out to our sponsoring organization, Sundown M Ranch, where recovery begins, sundown.org. I'm Neil Scott, reminding you to stay healthy, live in gratitude, and be kind to one another. Remember, the bright side of addiction is recovery. Pass it on.